Mr. Richie Corcoran.
Hello.
Hello. How are you, my friend?
Good.
Welcome to the podcast and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
If someone is listening to this podcast, if they've clicked, it's probably because I have an outrageously clickbaity title on along the lines of 5x your salary, or I've increased my salary by 500%. So would you mind starting by maybe giving a little bit of context? It's not clickbait. This is your story.
Yeah.
And give me a little bit of insight into that part of your journey, and then we'll use that as a springboard because we've tried to not talk before we turned it on here.
Yeah.
We're going to go down some rabbit holes today. But
Okay.
before we do, if you give us a little bit of context about that particular part of your journey.
Yeah, sure. So I work in a 9-to-5 job. I don't have a side hustle. I don't have a extra business. I'm just an employee. And I really believe in the power of being an employee when you've got a good set of principles and a good set of guiding beliefs that's bringing you through your career. And how I got to this realization was when I was kind of getting into kind of the kind of good moments of my career, I started getting promoted and I started working my way through a couple of different companies. And then it was only after I was able to look back, I said, right, in the last 5 years, I've increased my salary by 500%. And that was a phenomenal jump and an absolute amazing journey to go on. But the fact that I'd done that, I was like, wow, like that's remarkable. Like that's a really huge amount of percentage, 500% in 5 years. And I started thinking a lot about how I'd done it. And what I realized was there was nothing kind of special. I'm not innately special to have been able to do that. But what I realized was there was probably a set of principles and guidelines that are repeatable and replicable that I'd done that I could talk to other people about. So I spent a year building out what that looked like. I'd done it on planes when I was traveling for work. I'd done it in the evenings. And I obsessed over how can I summarize how I'd done that journey. And the reason it's clickbaity and the reason it sounds like that is because it is, right? It's 500% in 5 years. And then I created a course called the 5 Steps to Increase Your Salary. That's all lovely bit of marketing spin, but that's all it is. But there is a real guideline and recipe for how to do that. And that's essentially what I've produced. So I've produced a course, the 5 Steps to Increase Your Salary. It's for free. It's on YouTube. And yeah, that's where we are today. So I did increase my salary by 500% in 5 years.
Well, congratulations. I didn't realize this wasn't necessarily the intention. Everybody wants to increase their salary, but you didn't actually have this plan from the start. It was more a reflective experience.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was more a reflective experience because I think I was, I am massively ambitious in terms of my career. And, we can talk about the entrepreneurial and intrapreneurial journey that got us there. But I was so ambitious to look around and see opportunities. And then I started to get into industries and roles where previous salary ceilings that I would have thought were there were not there. And I would have seen these new salary ceilings. And I kind of said to myself, hey, if this money is there to be made, I'm coming to get it. And it was only in the specific industries and in the specific roles that I uncovered that those opportunities were there. And then that drove whatever kind of entrepreneurial drive and ambition I had, that just lit a fire underneath it to say, hey, the salary heights you thought were there, they're smashed. You can go to much higher than you ever thought. And then so chase that goal. So I was chasing that goal. I want promotion. I want increase around a raise. Chasing, doing whatever it took, sometimes to my detriment, to climb that ladder. And then it was only kind of when I kind of burst through the clouds, if you like. I was like, okay, take a breath, look back. Wow, that was 500% in 5 years. Like that was incredible. But it was definitely not my plan to target that. It was just my plan to come for everything that was there to be taken.
Okay, yeah. I'll give a bit of perspective why this interests me so much. I've shared this with you already. I tend to be very blinkered in a lot of the conversations that I have, and I come at it from my perspective, which is obviously my perspective. It's the only perspective that I have, which is as an entrepreneur, business owner, etc. And that kind of infiltrates a lot of the conversations. And sometimes I catch myself and I realize that the vast majority of people who listen, and this is just based off a general survey, talking to people, don't run businesses.
Yeah.
They are in employment in some shape or form. So it sometimes can sound like the things I'm talking about are directed down like the business owner and the entrepreneur. But what I've learned in my journey over the years is a lot of these lessons are just life lessons that can be applied in different areas. And there's nothing necessarily that different between working in a company or running your own company. Obviously, there's some fundamental differences there. But so I think what's going to be nice about this conversation is you're going to be able to fill in a lot of the gaps I would have, but we'll have some really nice crossover and shared experience, even though we come from different backgrounds.
Yeah.
You said a couple of things there in that initial piece about the salary and you're not that special. Do you know over the average person's lifespan how much they would increase their salary from? I know it's really broad, but I'd say there's probably a bell curve. Most people don't increase their salaries 5 times
No,
in their entire career, let alone in 5 years.
There's a great stat, I think it's from a Forbes article, that says the people who stay in the same job for, maybe like 5 to 10 years will on average earn half the amount of salary that people who change job every 2 years.
So when you say job, does that mean same company or same role or industry?
I think it means different company.
Different companies.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's definitely something that I have used, when leaving one job, one company and going to a different company. That's your moment. You have to go in as high as you can, because when you get into the company, you're going to be stuck with that kind of like annual raise, that like 2 to 4%.
Yes.
Maybe, if you got 8%, you'd be over the moon. But you're going to get stuck on that kind of annual salary performance review cycle. So when you go into that new job, that new company, you have to be coming in as high as you can, because that's your one chance to jump. So the majority of my jumps came from moving company. And going in at 20, 30, 40% higher than my previous company.
That's so interesting. Because I'd heard this conversation over the last 4 or 5 years, and again, I don't have the stats, maybe you do, around the significant shift in an individual staying with a particular company for an extended amount of time. And it seems to be a culture thing now within certain industries that it's just expected you're going to be changing industries. And now, obviously, there's an incentive to do that. There's a financial incentive to move to a different company, and not a lot of incentive to stay, unless, I would imagine, there's probably some roles where maybe the bonuses increase, or some tech jobs maybe where you get a lot of equity in the company or something like that, or startups. But in your average job, you have a very linear pathway for most people. So why would you not leave?
Exactly. And I think you want to be conscious of getting the balance right. Like some people, I know recruiters, if they're looking at people who are definitely less than a year, is a red flag. You want to be doing that 18 months to 3 years.
In the new company, they look at you going,
he's a jumper. He's jumping one to the other. So, and then how many times have you done that? So, my career looks like, 2 years, 4 years, 1 year, 1 year. And now I'm in a company now. I have to stay here. And I love my job, so I'm going to stay here. But I have
for the benefit of
the employer. But I have to, I want to stay in this job, but I also need to, for my CV story, right? 2 year, 4 year, 1. I can't have another 1, right? Because then I've 3 jobs in a row where I've barely done a year. That's going to reflect really bad on me.
Yeah.
So what I need to do now is get to that another like 3 to 4 year stint. And I hope to, and I enjoy the company. So that will then say, there's a story there. He likes coming into companies for 2 to 4 years. That's kind of the linearity. Maybe that company didn't work out for a reason. Maybe that company didn't work out for a reason, but you can see he is there for the longer time.
Yes.
And that's a kind of story I have to build up on my CV to kind of think of the longevity of my career and where the next place I'll go to. You can't just keep going 1. So as much as I do advise jumping to different companies for salary raises, you have to do it very responsibly and very considered as well.
When you go in for that interview so you're in company number 1 and you're moving to company number 2, and you're going in and you're looking for that extra 20%, 25%, whatever it is, what does that conversation sound like? Because, okay, you're leaving company 1 and this was your role and this was your salary level. Now, they might not know exactly the figure, but they'll have a good idea. This is the role in this type of company. This is, if they're interviewing, they'll know what those guidelines are. How do you then go into a new company and say, well, I'm now worth 20% more?
Yeah.
And it's not even day 1 yet.
Yeah. That's always the awkward standoff with the recruiter, where you ask, how much does the role pay? And they say, well, how much do you want? And I always say, like, you need to get in first in that question. And you want to say, like, I want to be respectful of your time. I want to be respectful of the process. I need to make sure the salary aligns with, my goals and is applicable. So we don't waste each other's time and get 4 rounds in, and then the salary is not what we need it to be. So I'm always a big believer in asking the salary up front at the beginning. But the biggest thing to be aware of is that a company who's hiring you, particularly in the tech sector, but I'm sure it's similar for all of them, they have a range. So what they had to do internally to get that role open was they had to build the scope of a role internally. They had to pitch it at a level. So what type of level is this person at? Are they like a level 1? Are they a junior person? Are they level 4 or 5, a more senior person? And then they had to associate a salary band with that level. And they would have a band that could be, say, 120 to 140K, where they want to land that role in. And the reason they have that band is because when you come in on it, those 4% increases that happen annually are also within that band. So the band might be 120K to 140K for a level 4 person. So when you're coming into that band, you need to be saying, hey, I want 142. If you probably won't get the information that is the band, but if you do know your industry and what you're worth and your salary, that's kind of where you want to land. And they'll be like, oh, that's outside of our band. And then you start to realize, okay, well, I want to be at the high end of the band, and the company wants to bring you in at the low end of the band.
Of course.
They want to bring you in the low end of the band so they can just drip feed you the difference between 120 and 140 over the next 10 years and annual increases. You want to be at the high end of the band because it's more money, and then you will hopefully get promoted to a higher level. So level 5, and the level 5 band is 135 to 165. And then you want to be in that range. So that's a lot of the time what happens. So when you are asking for the salary increase in moving job, it's kind of, what is the range? What is the band you're in? What level are you coming in? If you ask all those questions and then just try to put yourself towards a higher end of it, just by naming your number. My number would often be 20, 30, 40K above where I am, just to see how that lands, and then see can they come back down to it.
That's so funny how it's just a game.
Yeah.
On the topic of it just being a game, where do you sit on this idea then of, so my understanding of a lot of these companies, specifically newer companies in tech industries and stuff like that, they're all about culture and internal culture and pride in your job and all this kind of stuff. We understand why they're doing that. You're working with a lot of people. You want to have some joint sense of purpose and some internal culture, etc. But our conversation is very clinical. I want more money. The best way to get more money, change jobs.
Yeah.
Get more money. Where does that sit in this whole spectrum of loyalty, let's say? And I know these are a lot of kind of airy-fairy terms, but these are the stories that are being told by the companies. We care about you and we want you here, and you care about us, and we're a team and we're on this mission together, and we're going to achieve this thing and send it to the moon, and we're going to change the world and all this kind of stuff. And you're like, yeah, super, but there's more money over there, so I'm going over there. What's that conversation like in that space at the moment?
Yeah, like I've had that a couple of times where companies were treating me really well, and like my direct manager, or I was with a smaller company and like the CEO, like, treated me so well, paid me well. But at the end of the day, like I have 2 kids, I have a mortgage, I get very primal in terms of when it comes to an opportunity to bring in more money for my family, an opportunity to bring in more stability to my life, to have better. Like, loyalty doesn't even come into it. Like I'd go to the company and say, hey, I have this opportunity. I'd actually love it here, but for the sake of my family, I can't walk away from that money. I have this other offer. I can't turn that down. And it's nothing to do with loyalty. It's nothing to do with the mission. It's nothing to do with anyone's personality. And I think companies understand that, because they'll drop you as quick if they need to. Like, we've seen this a lot with the tech layoffs over the last couple of years. Like, there was people in Microsoft in particular who are there like 10, 20 years gone, just as part of the layoffs. So you can't ever be under any illusion that the company is going to actually have any loyalty to you.
And other companies are happy to poach as well. And
I think, if you really care about what your role and you really feel connected to a company and its mission, the best way to do it is be like, hey, I have these salary goals. I need to be earning this much money in this amount of years. Can you help me build a path to get there? Because I have this offer that is kind of dangling in front of me that I think gets me there quicker, but is there anything you can do because I want to be here? Some companies might say, oh, well, look, you've already gone too far. You've done an interview. Go ahead, go. That's fine. But some companies might be like, look, thanks for giving us the opportunity to give you a rebuttal. Here's what we can do. And it might still not be enough, or it might be enough, and then you're good to go. But you should never be under any illusion that a company owes you any loyalty, and you definitely don't owe a company any loyalty. Yeah.
This is such a strange conversation for me, because like, I'm running my business, and like a lot of the conversation in this space is all about mission and purpose. And a lot of entrepreneurs say it's not about the money.
Yeah.
And I run a business, so like it's
about the money.
It's most definitely, it's not that it's about the money, but you cannot ignore that part of the conversation. The whole thing just falls down on its arse, and you can't have any impact without the financial stability there. But there is this huge drive to make a difference and to have an impact, and there's a core mission and there's a set of values. And because it's generally quite small when you start a business, it is only you and a couple of people, and you are all on the same team. And some people are like, yeah, okay, we'll stay because and like, you don't pay yourself for 3 or 4 years. Like you wouldn't fucking take that in the tech industry. We're not gonna pay for 3 years, but you'd be part of something big.
Yeah.
Whereas you work for yourself, you're like, I have to pay the VAT this month, so I won't pay myself.
Yeah.
And you accept that because there's other elements there. I know this is gonna branch off in different directions as we talk about that employment space, but money is important. Your family is important. Your mortgage is important. So what's the conversation that you have with yourself about, this is the financial goal and this is the level where I will be happy? Because I feel like a lot of us, myself and this whole business entrepreneur space as well, don't really have a clear view on like, what's enough? What's the level I need to get to? Because when you get into my space, which is entrepreneurship, and a lot of the businesses I work with, they're fast growth and they're looking for the new thing, and it's more. I find a lot of us haven't actually had a proper conversation around like, what's the level where I'm happy with the amount of time, effort, and energy I have to put into this, and the amount of financial return I get from this to support my family or pay my mortgage or whatever.
Yeah,
it's different in when you're employed by somebody, because as we've just explored there, you don't necessarily have that loyalty. They don't have the loyalty to you in a lot of cases, not all cases. So the financial incentive is a much stronger pull. But like, what's the level where you decide, okay, X amount is enough. We'd all like more, but if it's going to involve just constantly hopping and jumping and changing and just like you mentioned at the start there, like I will get this money. It's there for the taking. I will take it. What's that mindset like, and how does that balance off with like, when is enough? And you want to support your family, that's perfect. Most people would argue that once you get into a certain bracket, it's probably enough for most people.
Yeah, I think there is a stat that says once you get above 80K.
That's an American stat, $80,000.
$80,000,
but it translates roughly to 60 or 70K.
Yeah, like your life doesn't get that much better as it goes up. I'm not sure that's true.
Fair.
I
wasn't expecting that. Okay.
I think it definitely does get better. And like, you know, I am someone who over my career, people would say I've shown and demonstrated a loyalty and enthusiasm to the companies I've worked for that far greater than I should have. I've given companies my time. I've given companies my peace of mind. I've given everything to the companies I've worked for. And I stand over that because I wasn't fueled by like a misguided love of the company. I was fueled by the life my salary allows me to live. So getting that balance right between finding a company that will allow you to have the time, but also that will give you a salary that opens up opportunities in your life to do great things and live a great life has been a real driver for me. So when we say like how much is enough, like what me and my wife struggle with as we have both increased our salary. So she's actually done 500% in 5 years as well as my student number one. As we've increased our salaries, we're looking around and like we don't feel that much more well off. You know, like that feeling of where we constantly have this feeling of where's the money going. And you know what I'm realizing now is that it's kids, yeah, it's kids, and it's piano, gymnastics, swimming, Gaelic, you know. But I think the kind of big key element of when is enough and what number are you aiming for, that's continually being rewritten for me along my career, because as I've seen people around me and I learn about their salaries and I learn about the trajectory they're on, particularly in the tech industry, like if you work for a company that sells software and like these American tech companies, that has been a bit of a kind of pivoting place in my life to get into those companies. And you see some of the salaries people are on, you see some of the heights people can go, and I just keep rewriting my ceiling every time I learn about a salary and every time I learn about a role and the direction you can go. I say, you know, maybe it's just a, you know, primal entrepreneurial drive inside of me. Like if they're on that much money, and not to be disrespectful to anybody, but I wouldn't think they have a massively higher level of competence than I do. I'm like, well, I'm coming to get that. Like if it's there to be had, I'm coming to get it. And that's the ambition element of who I am. Not everybody would probably have that, but for me, it's like I get a sniff of these higher salaries. I get a sniff of what people can earn, and there's nothing going to get in my way from getting there. And that comes with its sacrifices, you know. And then it's like, how can I do it without having to sacrifice? How can I try hunt that be on that pursuit, but yet not have all the negative consequences. So maybe you take it slower, maybe you're building towards it slower, maybe you know when to speed up, maybe you know when to slow down. And that's kind of the part of my life where I am now, where I'm probably in a bit of a slow down phase, just to kind of, things have been a bit shaky macroeconomically. So you need to kind of slow down. It's kind of, don't be telling everyone in your company, I want more money, I want more money, I want more money. Kind of be respectful of the macroeconomic environment, but then kind of get ready to go on another push, to new heights again.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I do think you're talking about traits that maybe everybody doesn't have.
Yeah.
I have no issue with ambition. I have no issue with drive. I have no issue with progress. I have no issue with more. But I think a level of awareness is a really important thing to have around that. I also think it's important to probably note, like, we're talking about specific pay brackets and bands here. And like, what's the average wage in Ireland?
Yeah, 40
odd K.
Yeah.
So that's what a huge amount of people, whether it's combined, two people working on a household, which is almost necessary now, really.
Yeah.
That's where a lot of people are, and there maybe jumps in increments. While they might have to jump through the same hoops and do a lot more, their increments and jumps are probably a lot less. So a lot of this will be industry specific, I suppose.
Yeah.
I'm interested in that conversation around what is enough, because like what you're describing there to me sounds like hedonic adaptation. So you get to a certain level, you realize that the ceiling's actually much higher, you go for that, you realize so we're just constantly in that phase where, I'm at here, but now this is enough. But I'm at, and now this is enough. I feel, and in both our environment, your environment and my environment, that could potentially offer some traps and could potentially offer some benefits too.
Yeah.
So I know in my environment, I've personally met quite a few people who've been on incredible growth journeys, massive ambition and drive, and it's absolutely destroyed their personal lives, their family lives, and their businesses eventually, because it's just this unbridled growth for the sake of growth.
Yeah.
I can see how that can drive people in a tech or corporate or whatever space too. You've, from how you're speaking, it's clear you have an awareness around this.
Increasing my salary by 500% in 5 years broke me a couple of times. Like, on that journey, the desperation to climb that ladder, and it might have been a lot of the time is when I was trying to get a new external role. And again, industry specific, but the tech industry would put you through 7 rounds of interview before you get it. And you invest so much of your time and your energy and your mind space and your peace and trying to get this job, and you don't get it. And that happens to you like 5-10 times, and you don't know where to turn, and you're questioning yourself, and you're questioning your ability and your competence and your ability to provide, and where's our future going to go, and I can't break into this, and I can't break into this higher level. And that kills you. Like, that knocks you for 6. And like, my wife has been with it every step we go, where like, I'd have a misguided level of confidence. Oh, that interview went really well, I think I'll be getting that job. And then I come back and I don't get it. And she's like, why did you say that? Like, why did you build yourself up? I said, well, I had to believe in myself. She's like, well, now you're absolute down at the dumps because you didn't get it. And it was like really, really dark times along that journey to get that. And every time I was absolutely broken, I said, well, give me a few days to, sulk and give out. And then it's like, okay, then you rebuild from that. And I think that has been one of the most powerful experiences I've had, where I'm no longer afraid to break myself, because I've had the confidence that I've been able to rebuild again. And it's kind of like, when you rebuild, you're kind of hardened and you have all that self-awareness, and you know the cost. So you go into another, say if I wanted to jump again into a new role or a new career, and it was heights that I was really going to take a lot to get to because I'm trying to jump up a level. I know what that's going to cost me. I know the pain if I don't get it. I've been there before, but I'm no longer afraid to do that, because I think I've learned how to manage it. I think I've been given, and I think I've built the tools to deal with those situations. And that's a very powerful thing to do now. So as I said, now I am in a very reflective state. I have a good salary, I have a good life, love to spend time with the kids, trying to prioritize that. And I'm in that kind of slowing down period, but I'm sure there's going to be a time where it's time to ramp back up and go at that again. And I'm ready to do that, because I've built the skills and I've built the tools that if it doesn't work, I'll be able to rebuild again.
Yeah, it's interesting, because like, obviously fear of rejection is what stops a lot of people from growth. And it's not the actual rejection. Rejection, actually, when you think about it, is fine. Nothing happens to you, really. Like, if you go for a job interview, unless you've hung your other job out on the line for this interview, you're fine.
Yeah.
You could go for 20 interviews and fail them all, and you're still sitting in your existing job. So your life hasn't negatively changed. You've just put a lot of energy into this and it hasn't worked out, which is fine. I find the fear of rejection and the unknown is what stops most people from doing this. So whether it's in going for a promotion or changing job or whatever it might be, I think working on that first step, once you get through that, you kind of solve a lot of those problems because nothing actually happened. I felt bad for a while. I felt rejected, but I can handle those and move forward. Nothing objectively happened.
Yeah. I've been thinking about this a lot lately because a lot of my friends would laugh at me. They don't I work fully remotely. I work on a laptop. I have a lot of friends who are tradespeople or who are working physically, and people would think I don't work hard. And I thought about this a lot lately about what does hard work look like? And I think in a lot of people's perception of hard work is, you're getting up at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, you're going to work physically all day, and that's really, really hard. But one of the realizations I'm coming to now is like, I probably work a lot harder than people realize in a different way. And I'm working hard. It's really hard to put yourself in an environment where you feel insecure. And it's really hard to put yourself out for opportunities where you're going to get rejected. And it's really hard to continually do that. And it's really hard to put yourself in a career or an industry that you know nothing about and you constantly feel inadequate. And it's really hard to be the stupidest person in the room and have to learn. And it's really hard to have to ask the stupid questions to people who know the answer so innately that you feel silly asking them. And to do that repeatedly and for that to be your career journey is probably the hardest work you're going to do. Mentally and for your professional development. So now when I think about working hard, are you willing to work that hard? Because the rewards for doing that hard work can be great. You can change your salary, you can change your industry, you can change your career, but it's so hard to do. And it's probably the hardest work anyone could do.
You've mentioned a few times now moving into an industry where you don't necessarily know much about it or you're not necessarily qualified for the specific role or whatever like that. What's that? How are you going for a role that's that unfamiliar? Because traditionally people might think about the quote unquote corporate ladder, right? So it's a ladder and you're on step 1, you build this set of skills, whatever. And then for step 2, you need this specific skill. So you learn this skill and you move to step 2. But what is it? You've described a slightly different scenario there.
Yeah, so I think, and I'm conscious that a lot of my opinions and a lot of my experience are based on working for the tech industry.
Yes.
And when people hear that, they don't really know what it means. They think you're technical and they think you're a software engineer. Like the tech industry is essentially a company who sells software. So if you sell software like a Sage accounting tool, Sage is a tech company. If you sell software like a Salesforce, people might be familiar with, it's like a CRM tool, Salesforce is a tech company. So inside of those companies, there's a ton of software engineers and a ton of technical people who are writing code and being technical. And there's also a lot of dumb salespeople like me who are just trying to be responsible for selling software or doing some more kind of like sales focused, marketing focused roles. And those companies in the tech industry are typically very well paying. They're very kind of, American centric companies who set up a European office, and they can be great places to work. But it involves learning what the technology does. So everyone kind of can understand that Sage is an accounting software, but there are softwares that I've been working in that are so niche and so technical in nature of what they sell that it's a real put off to get into those roles. So a great example actually is my wife, right? My wife was managing a creche. It's a thankless job. Like the people who work in creches are just phenomenal people.
My folks owned a creche for 30 years, so
it's a thankless job, and the people who work in a creche, like educating the children, are doing an amazing job, and they're criminally underpaid. And she was working 12-hour days, just not being not really earning what she probably deserved. And then I was in a tech company and I was having a ball. I was in this junior sales role. I was having a lot of fun in the role. I was getting paid really well. I got to travel a bit. She's seen me have more flexibility, more time with the kids. And she was bringing one of our kids to the creche and I was having more time. So I said to her, I was like, look, you can get into this role. It's a junior role. It's a junior sales role. All you have to do is book meetings for the sales team. But it'll involve learning an entirely new scope of administrative tools you use internally, an entirely new language and how to speak to customers, entirely new concepts about what the technology does. And that was a mountain for her to climb. Now, she had me teaching her because she came into the same company, but it was really, really hard for her to do. And she found it really, really hard. And I just kept pushing, kept educating, kept guiding her on it. And obviously having me help massively. But it was still really, really hard for her to do. And she wanted to quit. She wanted to go back. She's 5 years in now and doing absolutely phenomenal and has a better life than she ever could have imagined if she stayed in the childcare industry. But that was so hard for her to do, to learn about what this software does. Like, it's a data integration tool. Like 99% of people won't even understand what that means. And you don't even need to understand what that means, because all the different tech companies have some niche bit of technology that do something for businesses, and no one in the real world actually ever thinks about it. We have this joke that every time we get stressed about work, we just say, oh, it's just B2B software. Like, it's not changing the world. But that's a great example of someone who went from a creche into a tech company, had to learn an entirely new way of being, entirely new way of working, and then excelled in it. And then, outside of my wife and me coaching her on it, I've seen other people do it, and it's been really hard for them, but they did it and they had success.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, stories like that they're fantastic and they're really inspiring. What I like about it is the empowerment side of it. Now, obviously, she was quite lucky to have you in her corner too, and there's a bit of coaching there as well and stuff like that. But it doesn't take away from the fact that there are more options for people now than there used to be. However, those options, as you've just alluded to, are not easy.
Yeah.
They might be simple and relatively straightforward. I mean, there's a process to go through, but it's not easy and it is hard work. And I think it's worth noting as well, you mentioned there about hard work. We do have an idea about what that is, and this new intellectual worker role, which is essentially man and laptop, is something that a lot of people struggle with, especially if they're of an older generation, number one, or if they're in a trades role or a physical role where like the hard work is literally going to physically expend energy all day long when they're looking at you sitting on your laptop.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like the same thing, which is fine, and nobody has to agree on that. But it is a new age, and I think that has presented lots of new opportunities for us. And it'll be interesting to see as we move forward. AI is here now, and I've seen some of the magic specifically in like data collection and software generation, and it's just a click of a button now. It's like how many departments are going to be downsized or shifted. So there's constant challenges here. So I think hard work for me incorporates a lot of what you mentioned.
Yeah.
Your attitude, like whether you're a plumber or selling software B2B, it's your attitude. It's how you show up.
It's hard to be happy on a Monday morning, no matter what you do. If you're going to sit on your laptop,
delighted on a Monday morning.
Well, if you're going to sit on a laptop or you're going to go be a plumber, like that's the hard work,
Yeah, I think this segues nicely because you touched on it a couple of times into like what are the compromises, because no matter what decision you make in life, you're deciding, and this is not an original thing for me, this would have been discussed in a few podcasts at the moment, but if you make decision A, you're deciding to not make decision B. Everything has a cost, an opportunity cost. If you do this thing, you don't have the opportunity to do this thing. And I think if you decide to become a plumber or you decide to become a salesperson or whatever it might be, you're deciding to not do the other thing. So your Monday morning or your energy or your sense of purpose on some level is a decision. On some level. Now, I know it's funny the way it works. You make a lot of these decisions when you're 18 and you're out of school, and you kind of fall into a job that dictates the rest of your life. And some of us get quite lucky and have a great pathway and opportunities open up. And some of us then are a plumber at 47 and don't enjoy our job, but didn't really have the opportunity before. So it's really nuanced. So I never like to give blanket statements, but no matter what we do, we make compromises and sacrifices. You've touched on that a couple of times now. In your personal experience, what were some of those harder moments, those things that you would have had to sacrifice? Because people listening would go, fucking 5x the salary. They're kind of doing some maths in their head. They have a rough idea what that looks like. They're like, fuck, your man he's doing well here. He can't talk about sacrifices. He's got this money. But talk to me about your journey. What does that look like? Because most people look at the outcome and not at what it took to get there.
Yeah, I think there's mainly two sacrifices. I think the first one is just time with your family. Like when I started that journey, I would have had a 2-year-old and a pregnant wife in our first house that we're
two big challenges.
Yeah, that we're trying to do up. And the role, what I was kind of realizing in the kind of first role that kind of kickstarted a lot of this was that, I have an opportunity here and I need to execute on this opportunity because this is an amazing company that's growing. This, a tide can raise my boat. I need to be on this journey with it. I need to work hard and I'll get rewarded. And that just cost, I wasn't present. I had to travel a bit. And my wife and I talk about this a lot now that, it's still a concern that I can't, don't want to let myself go back there. But I just was giving everything that I was working early. I was working late. I'd be on my laptop in the night and I wasn't mentally there. and I wasn't mentally present when I should have been, and I was thinking about other things, and I was thinking about work, and it was just occupying my mind and making me distracted and making me more absent than I should have been, both physically and mentally and emotionally for my wife as well. So luckily, when I was in that first role, I was almost there for 4 years. They had a really great paternity leave program where I was able to take 4 months when my second was born. And I just kind of said, right, I'm taking these 4 months off, full pay. And I'm going back as a different person, because the company was also growing. And like you said earlier on, felt I was part of something, and I kind of had this ownership stake in it, because you do get equity in these companies. And we were growing so quickly, and I felt part of something, and I felt connected to it. And then by the time I was 4 years in, almost getting ready to leave, and I took that paternity leave, I was saying to myself, oh, well, this company's big and bold enough now to take care of itself. It's not a startup that needed me. And that was a great kind of breaking point to have that paternity leave. But then the other sacrifice that it cost me was just my own mental health, about my own competency. Am I adequate enough? Can I do this? You know, when you learn about, you know, there are these salary heights and these roles and these opportunities to earn XYZ amount of money, and you say, oh, I want to go get that from me and my family. And then you get to a point where you're like, oh, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't know if I'm competent enough in this role, or I don't know how to build a path. How can I get on the right ladder to bring me down that track? You know, just that feeling of putting that weight on yourself and the pressure on yourself and then failing. That happened to me multiple times, and it was really hard when that happened to me. It was really hard. It was like, there's probably probably in that 5-year period, there was probably 2 times I went for maybe 3 roles that I went for, and I just poured everything into going for these roles. I was telling my wife, yeah, this is it. Like, because I would have got to the final stage of every role, and then they end up going with someone else, or there was a contracting issue in another one. And then just the absolute, like, you know, you fall to the bottom of the well when it doesn't go your way. And that took a huge mental toll on me, and, you know, just beat me down so much. And I think, you know, looking back, you know, when I'm coaching people and I talk about this idea of pushing yourself to the limit, don't be afraid to break yourself, empty the tank, give it all. I give that advice with a disclaimer, and I give that advice with a kind of, you know, warning that you don't have to do that. Like, I've got like 5 key pillars of how to increase your salary. That's one of them. But the other 4 are really good. And if you just do the other 4, you'll probably have a great time increasing your salary. I just would feel I'd be doing a disservice to omit potentially one of the areas that helped me the most. And just that absolute giving everything, you know, because that came across every day. People felt my buy-in, my enthusiasm, how bought in I was. So that was a huge part of how I increased my salary, but I'd say it's optional. And I don't advise everyone to do it, because it's not, you can have a great successful career probably without doing what I did. It was just what I ended up doing, and I stand by it because it got me where I am, and I'm okay. But I'm very conscious that to other people, you know, how hard it is to get that rejection repeatedly, you know, it wouldn't be for everybody.
Yeah, and it's a great point around like survivorship bias. We hear a lot of these stories from people are hearing your story now because you have a story to tell. It was a successful story. You're sitting here now feeling good, in a good place. You want to tell your story. You reached out to me. We had a conversation. You're expressing yourself. That's not everybody. No. And similarly in my space, like, I don't know what the stats are, but like roughly around 80 to 90% of startups, they fail. Yeah, they don't continue. And we don't hear about those ones. We only see the success. So it can be frustrating for people, and it's a good topic to discuss from both our perspectives, because you don't think everybody should necessarily do this, and I definitely don't think. We were laughing before. I don't think everyone should start a business, and you were saying it's weird to hear someone who's in a business that's currently working, it's moving forward, it's operating, and I don't think everybody should do this. Whereas originally it would have been like, yeah, quit your job, go get that good life, build your own business, work for yourself, complete freedom, make loads of money, etc. And it's just not that, but perceptions are really powerful. In your case, you had all of this sacrifice and this context that you were willing to do A, weren't willing to do B, made certain decisions, and you got to this end point of 5xing your salary. All people hear is you 5x your salary, and give me the 5 pillars, I'll do those things. But it's so much more nuanced. There's so much more context in that. Yeah. And then sometimes people, it's so weird, because like I obviously understand how my business works, and we have our specific challenges, and we're trying to grow and all that kind of stuff. I don't know what it looks like to the outside, and sometimes people come and say things to me, and I'm like, I have no idea where you get like mad things like about how big and successful the company is and how giant the team might be. There's 3 of us at the moment. And they're like, there must be so many people, there's so much going on. I see so many people coming in. Must be money everywhere. Like we're having bats and big bats and money and stuff. And I'm like, God, is that what it looks like from the outside? That's so misleading.
Yeah.
And it's not my intention to put that forward. But there's a narrative out there around businesses and content and tech jobs and money and all this kind of stuff, but it's only part of the story.
I've had that as well a little bit where, I in forums like this, I talk about it, but I don't probably talk about it enough, the cost of getting where I got to. So a lot of people just think I fell into it, or a lot of people think I got lucky, and I definitely did get lucky. Like I'm a big believer in how the harder you try, the luckier you get, but sometimes you just get lucky. And I definitely think that's part of my story as well. But, people just think I work remotely, I sit on a laptop all day. They don't actually see what it took to increase your salary by 500% in 5 years. Now, when I start coaching people and I spend some time with them and I'm talking about this is the type of stuff you have to do, they realize, oh wait, that's what you've done. That's not easy to do. It's not easy to do 20 interviews in a month and have the mental capacity to be able to do that and stuff like that. So, I think it's not always what people see on the outside. That's reality. Yeah.
But before we move on, do you want to share the rest of the steps, or do we have to go to your course to get this?
No, definitely. The course is free. Like it's
on YouTube.
It's on YouTube. It's entirely free. So the first pillar of the 5 steps to increase your salary is chameleons get results. And what this is about is essentially that inside your company, it's less about you and the way you want to get things done and your personality. I'm a big believer in adapting to the people you work with. So if you're working with different people in an organization, maybe, you have to work with someone more senior, more junior, your counterpart, someone in a different department. They're all going to have really different personalities. And the best thing you can do is adapt yourself to who they need you to be. So some people are going to want you to lead them on a project. Some people are going to want to lead you. Some people want to work with you as their equal. Some people need to, talk in a very, certain kind of tone of voice. Some people talk in a different tone of voice. And what I've done in my career is just look around and figure, okay, he needs me to be like this. She needs me to be like that. And I just adapted myself. And the outcome of that is that you get known as someone who's really good to work with. And you get known as someone who can get the job done because you're less associated with how an objective gets done and more concentrated of just getting it done. So if you're really picky about how this gets done, fine, whatever. I'm responsible for getting it over the finish line. I'm not going to fight with you to get it done my way. And so that pillar of chameleons get results has been really probably fundamental to how I've got where I've gotten. The second pillar.
Can we go back and forth on each point as we go?
Of course, yeah.
Because I'll forget all the context. Okay, go. Want to do. That's really interesting, right? So let me give my thoughts on that one. In like, say you're running your own business or whatever, it's the customer is always right is a version of that.
Yeah.
So I think there's a nice mid ground there because I think as I'm listening, there's a part of me kind of red flagging a little bit because I'm like, I don't want to compromise my values, just make someone else like me or want to work with me, etc. And that kind of makes me throw up a little bit in my mouth. But I also want to march into a room and I can see how in an organization we've got multiple moving parts and there is an objective. That objective is going to be much harder to achieve if you've got all these competing personalities and all. It's just going to be so much friction.
It's competing egos.
It's basically egos, yeah. And if I ran that company that you worked for, I'd be like, fuck, just pick the people who want to work with each other. Jesus, let's just get the job done. This guy's a bit better, but just get the job done. Exactly. I don't care. I need the job done. I don't really care how you do it.
Exactly.
If I ran the business, so I get that. In my space, you always hear, especially like the creative space, people like myself, I'm like, I have this beautiful idea I want to create and give to the world. The world don't give a shit about my idea. They want me to solve their problem.
Yeah.
So I have to be willing to listen to my customer and they are always right about their problems. So it means I need to adapt my offering and how I engage with them to their problems because it's their problems they're trying to solve, not my problems. However, for me, there's a line where I'm not going to compromise on who I am from a value standpoint.
Yeah.
So it's a nice mid-ground there for me where, I interact with my clients in a different way than I interact with the lads who play football with, for example. You do shift and adapt to your environments. But for me, if that shift is within my accepted, I'm not compromising principles or values here.
Exactly.
Let's do this thing. Let's get the job done. Yeah. If it's outside that, I'm like, for me, it's not worth it.
Often in a work environment where you're just working on some project.
It's
not going to question your personal beliefs and your morals. It's just going to be like, okay, I have to, this person wants to dictate to me or other person are looking for me to dictate to them. Can I step up to that? It's not even about
take my ego out.
Yeah, take my ego out. Like, what does this person need me to be for this job to get done?
Yeah.
And it can be just like I had an example before where there was two of my colleagues that weren't really getting on, and one said to me, "Oh, she won't do this," and the other one said, "Oh, actually, I don't think that's a good idea." And like I was in the middle of them, and essentially these were two people who wouldn't adapt to working together.
Yeah.
I was two different people, and it might sound like I'm in a sly. I don't think of it that way. I was two different people talking to them and being a conduit to get them to a middle ground. But I was very different in how I spoke to each of them.
Yeah.
Because I matched their personalities, and then we were able to get it done in the end.
Yeah.
It was just some simple, meaningless task that just had to get done, but I was able to get it done. Both of those people thought I was great to work with.
Yes.
And the job got done.
Yeah. That's outcome focused. And again, unless you were like lying or backbiting.
Yeah, no, it wasn't any of that. Because it never is.
It never is. Yeah. That's what people go to straight away. Oh God, this is a seedy person doing all this shady stuff in the background. Yeah. If you're just like, wait, these two people can't work together, too much friction. I can be the mid-ground, the pivot point here. And yeah, it requires me being a little bit firmer with this person, a little bit softer with this person, but ultimately we get the job done and I haven't broken my own code.
Exactly.
Perfect. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. For again, I enjoy this back and forth. From my context, the challenges I have with data, I've no real perspective on that. So the outcome is my outcome. So the first thing I could question is maybe my outcome is wrong.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're a company, like the outcome is the goal equals the salary, equals my personal goal. Whereas here I'm like, oh God, they've said this and I don't agree, but they said this, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the whole thing is wrong. So it's another layer of complexity for me. But I do get a very clear message now that I'm willing to listen to the customer of this is the service I provide, but this is actually where their problem is. So I can adapt the service to fix the problem, as opposed to just hard-nosed my fucking service down their neck, and then maybe it'll fix their problem, maybe it won't, but it's my service.
Exactly.
That's an ego thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. Sorry, I only let you get to number
one.
Worries. Let's go to number two.
Number two is know where the ship is going. And this has been a bit of this made me seem seedy as well, actually, but it's been a real kind of continuing element of my career that's really helped me. And so every step is broken down into 3 sections. So it's essentially 15 mini lessons, but one of the sections is what I call the risk-free confidant. And I'll give you exactly what I've done in my career. Every time I've had a manager or I've had someone who is a senior person in the company who has more access to kind of the information of the plans and the future goals, and I've befriended them just naturally enough, I've always made a point of trying to build them into what I call a risk-free confidant. And what I mean by this is that I will kind of get a relationship with them where they can share information with me about the plans of the company. And they could say things like, hey, we're going to open a new role in 6 months and you could be perfect for it. Just to let you know, I'm just giving you a heads up. And if that role came up and it didn't open, it went to somebody else, or they just told me I wasn't right for it, I can't get angry about that. Your manager confiding in you is not the same thing as your manager promising things to you. So what I've been really successful in is having those relationships where I'm aware of the future plans. I get to start kind of, dropping some breadcrumbs to say, oh, I'd like that, and this is how it might suit my career development. And if this happened, or maybe it's something like, the company wants to focus on a different metric, and I can start getting ahead of it and being part of a solution build rather than just receiving the update. And that idea of like, knowing where the ship is going, having that confidential kind of relationship with a manager where you never put it back on them. They've never promised you a thing. They've never told you you're going to get something, but they're telling you information that's coming in the future. That's really, really valuable for me. And it's how I've probably positioned myself for new roles, or it's how I've kind of built my more of my career trajectory. Where is my stepping stone? Where is my next promotion? Where is my next role coming from? And knowing that information has helped me do it a lot.
Yeah, I can see how that relationship could be powerful, because I can imagine that people in this, and maybe you've been in managerial positions before where you have, I won't call them subordinates, but people who report to you or whatever. And I can see how that position in most cases is probably a little bit thankless, because you have one level up is kind of pressing down on you, and then one level below just is your classic like begrudging employee, whereas the fucking boss and everything is a task, and you're the guy with all the power and all the money and all the position, and I just have to do what you say, and the kind of autocratic leadership thing comes in there as well. Whereas if you've demonstrated you're somebody who can be trusted with information and doesn't just look for more or look to extort that or look to leverage or pressure that, and you're kind of happy to get involved and to move forward and progress, but also happy to keep doing
Yeah.
your best if you don't get that.
Yeah.
I can see how that develops a nice relationship and trust.
That's a huge part of it. That
Yeah.
when you say the role does come up and you were prepping for it and you don't get it, it's a huge part of it. And this is also it all my pillars tie in together. This is also tying into the idea of being a chameleon. Is like when you don't get the role and it doesn't go your way, you need to adapt to who your manager needs you to be. And your manager needs you to be someone capable of not getting a role, continuing on, capable of receiving the critical feedback and making those improvements. That's the person your manager needs you to be. And if you do that, if you make those adaptations, the next time it comes around, you're right in there again to get that promotion.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It comes back to that conversation around awareness, because if you're in a role and you feel like you've been passed up for that promotion and you're frustrated and your ego's getting involved and you just keep hammering that door over and over and over again, you're probably never going to get there.
Yeah.
So the bit of awareness to go, one, is it what I want? Well, then here's how I get it.
Mm-hmm.
If here's how I get it is something I'm not willing to do or does go against my morals, or maybe I don't share the same values as what's required for the role, that's also empowering, because that's also a decision you can make. Okay, I have no more progression in this direction.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have other options to consider. Do I leave the company? Do I look for another role? Do I move sideways instead of up? Like there are other options, but I can see how you would never really give yourself those options if you're not A, willing to adapt, or B, willing to say, okay, I'm not willing to adapt, but what are my other options? Yeah. You could just kind of a bit hard-nosed about that and go, fuck this guy, it's his problem, he just passed me over. And I hear a lot of that. That's what I hear a lot of.
Yeah.
My manager's a prick and she just didn't give me the role because she likes someone else better, or she's just not that, she doesn't recognize my value, whatever. I'm like, that's okay. But that is the problem now.
Yeah, it's their problem.
Now
their attitude is
now
their
it's
problem.
your problem, because you haven't got the role. So
Yeah.
what are the other things you can do here instead of playing the victim?
Yeah.
Now, in some cases, you've bad management. Let me just you do have bad management.
Yeah.
But even that is something that you have to make a decision around, because that could be a stonewall block.
Yeah.
And should you adapt to a bad manager? Well, if you want the role, it's your choice.
It's your choice, yeah.
It's your choice.
It's your choice.
Ultimately, yeah. Okay, love that. Number 3.
Number 3 is apply anyway. So this is a kind of, this whole pillar is about whether you feel a job is above your station, whether you don't think you can get it, still apply for it. And there's a couple of pieces in this pillar, but one of the ones is that even if you feel completely unqualified, if you can, within reason, like don't apply for a CEO role, within reason, applying for those roles that would really be a stretch of your ability and your competence. Still apply for those roles, because even going into the interview process, you can learn so much about that. And what people don't really realize is, like, I would, coach people on building a CV. We get them an interview. They might have 2, 3, 4 rounds of the interview process, and it takes a lot of weight to do that and to go through that. And then people often, when I'm coaching them, want to do like one at a time. It's like, okay, I have an interview, and I'm preparing for this interview. And it's particularly if you're really hungry and want that salary growth. Like, what do you mean you've won? Like, you need to be applying to every single applicable job within reason that makes sense for your skill set and your experience level, and that pushes you a little bit further. You need to be applying to all of them if you're in this job hunt mode. You need to be taking every first call you take, going through as many rounds as you can, because you start to build what I call like the interview muscle. Mm. And people who are, some people, like, an interview is a lot of people's worst fear. And you really have to try find your way to get over that. And it's hard. Again, it's hard work to get over that. But if you can repeatedly be in the interview environment, you get really familiar with pitching your story. Who are you? Tell me about yourself. You get really familiar with, tell me about a time you did X, Y, Z. You've told that a couple of times now on all these failed interviews that you've had. You get really comfortable being able to sell your experience in relation to what the role needs, and tying your experience and how your transferable skills translates to what they're looking for. And you get really familiar with doing that. And the more you do that, the more you build your interview muscle. And then you're able to, when the right role comes along, when it's right for you, you nail it, because you're so well prepared. You've done so many interviews, but you only get that by putting in the reps. It's like any skill.
Exposure therapy, really,
exactly. And if you repeatedly do, and this is what I had done when I was first trying to break into tech, I had spent about a year applying for roles, and I constantly kept getting rejected. But by the end of that year, when the role I got eventually started coming up, I was really doing a good job at selling myself in an interview, navigating an interview. I was more confident asking what the salary was up front. I was more confident, have you any questions for me? I started to think of a few. Like, I was really getting good at being interviewed towards the end of that role. towards the end of that year, and it's only because I was applying. So there's different pieces in that pillar about applying for roles that are above your station, how you name your number, like what your salary you want to ask for and things like that, and how you position it. So that's number 3.
Yeah, really interesting. And I can see how that maps over as well in different contexts with me. A lot of this space is you don't really have, in fact, it's the opposite. You don't really have a lot of positive encouragement to try this thing or grow this thing or go for this thing. You actually have the opposite. Most people, why would you do that?
Yeah.
That's you're never going to do that. So you have a lot of negative reinforcement when you're kind of starting out with something. And also there's a lot of internal fear and bias and your own limitations, artificial limitations you put. Because like when you start a business, the growth is potentially limitless. And what you can do is you could price your service within reason, again, wherever you want it, really. And you can kind of do whatever you want and build whatever you want, depending on your industry, really. Like we have that freedom, but with that freedom comes a lot of unknown.
Yeah.
So you could be just way off target. But I found something very similar to what you've described there. Repetition reduces a lot of the fear around those things. We mentioned the fear of rejection. You get rejected enough times, you start to realize there's nothing to be afraid of here.
Yeah.
It's just a no. And then you get this whole rhetoric now, which I think we'll get to this thing with the content now in a minute, but you hear a lot of these like super successful business people saying the more no's you get, the better. They're missing a huge amount of initial work there. It's not the no doesn't equal good.
Yeah.
Like the failure doesn't equal learning by itself. It's everything you've done in the build up to that. No. Is what's valuable.
Yeah.
It's all the work, and then experiencing the no and not self-destructing is valuable. It's not the no itself. It's not the failure itself that's valuable. No one wants to fail.
Yeah.
But to use a cliche, there's loads of learning in there. We only get that by doing it.
Yeah.
And it's reps. It's just reps and reps and reps and reps. And what you've shared with me there, I have a couple of people who would, not that they have similar journeys to you, but they would have recognized very quickly that the more I do this, the more opportunity I get.
Yeah.
And more opportunities is a good thing. And they'd be very open-minded. There's one guy I'm thinking of in particular, and like would have walked into roles far senior to where his experience and skill set lay. He just had ultimate confidence. He walked in there knowing, and he failed 9 out of 10 of them, knowing I'm getting this job.
Yeah.
I taught myself into this job. And when people hear that, they're like, oh, talk yourself into it. It's kind of faking, really. And we talk about this fake it till you make it. But until you stretch the bounds of what you believe is possible, you're never, ever, no one else is going to believe in you if you don't believe it. So to rep that out and just get better at understanding, like all the even the questions they ask, most of them are the same questions. Tell me about the time you had conflict, did you resolve, and all this kind of stuff. Even getting super competent at recognizing this particular person, this particular role, asking this particular question is not the same as the same question in that particular interview. And I now know how to map that over. That's a skill. Interviewing is a skill.
And it only comes from the reps.
You have to do it. With me, it could be sales, like trying to sell my product. I've gotten enough no's to understand what they were saying no to.
Yeah.
And I've done it enough to realize it's not me they're saying no to, so I don't have to take it personally.
Yeah.
It took me fucking years to get to that. The terror of telling people what my price was.
Yeah.
Because they're going to say no. There's a no. Whereas now I'm like, if they say no, they're saying no to this particular thing, and that's fine. I can either learn from that or they're not a good fit. But like, it's just reps. It's just reps. So I can see how that maps over. Really, really good to know in that environment too, because again, it's not an easy thing to do, but it's quite simple to set up a bunch of interviews instead of one. Not that it's easy.
Yeah.
Doing all the interviews is hard, and it's hard work, as you alluded to, but it's not complex.
It's even hard work to get the interviews, like tailor a CV to each job.
Yeah.
But it's the necessary hard work if you want to increase your salary.
If you want this, this is the job.
And this is the thing. Some people say they want it, but they really don't. They want the outcome, but they don't want to do the work to get there. And there's sometimes when I work with people, and you know, I do career coaching for free. Like I don't ever want to charge the people I do career coaching for.
Cut that. Don't ever say I don't ever want to charge them.
I don't.
You blow up after this podcast now. You'll be like, fuck, I should have charged these people.
Just go to the YouTube. Watch a video. It's free. That's the scalable side of it. But the idea is that, you know, so many people want the outcome of increasing their salary, but they're not willing to do the hard work it takes to get there. And I have a lot of empathy for them, because it's really hard. Like, it's not easy to do. And if someone says, I don't want to do it, I don't take anything away from them. They're probably a phenomenal person in every other aspect of their life. I wouldn't blame anyone for not wanting to go through the torturous process of applying for jobs, getting auto-rejected by some system that doesn't think you've the right keywords in your CV, to getting on an interview with a recruiter who hasn't done their homework on who you are. And like, it is a
dear recipient.
It is a thankless task. And anyone who doesn't want to do it, I can completely understand. But then what people I'm trying to talk to is me, 17, 18, 19-year-old me, 22-year-old me who starts to hear about salaries. If you want 500% in 5 years, there's a level of work you have to operate at.
Yeah.
And this is how you do it.
I think I'm going to be a bit nitpicky here with language as well, because I think nobody wants to do all that work. But if they're willing to do the work, and you did say that, but I just want to clarify around that as well, because I think there's a misperception in whether it's your career world or your business or entrepreneurship world, that the people who do these things just love the grind.
Yeah.
And you've got Alex Hormozy out there who does genuinely seem like someone who just fucking loves the grind.
Yeah.
I am not Hormozy.
No.
I don't love the grind. I don't mind. I'll do the grind, but it's not why I did this. I didn't do this because I love to get up in the morning and fucking stick my nasal strips on and just grind. Yeah, that doesn't light my fire at all.
No.
I'll do it because I want the outcome.
Exactly.
And I'm now learning that this is just necessary. Like for the first 3 or 4 years of this, I don't know how you were in your career, but I was like, there's definitely a way to crack this code and just fucking grow the business and like sit back and kick the legs up and I'm business to get my time back. Where's my time?
Yeah.
I was like, no, pal, you got to pay your dues here. And I think I shared this to you before we started recording. I know people who are at a similar level to me in their business journey. I know people who are like significantly more progressed than I am, and then I know people who are just at outrageous levels, and it's the same the whole way. That doesn't change. That willingness to accept that this whole new levels, new devils. When you get to level 2, it's twice the difficulty of level 1. It's not half the difficulty. You're going the other way, pal. So you really gotta be willing to do that work, because no one wants to sacrifice. Unless you're David Goggins. No one actually is like, yeah, I love this. It's really hard. So that willingness to go, okay, I want the outcome. That's fine. I want the 5x salary. I want a successful business. Am I willing to do this level of work? And before even that, do I even understand what this looks like? Because how do I know if I'm willing to do it if I don't even know what it is? Yeah, I'm willing to work 40 hours a week. But this is not 40 hours a week. This is also evenings and mornings, prepping your CVs, doing your interviews, doing your research, doing your courses, getting your coaching. Are you willing to do that? Oh, no. Okay, well, that's what's required to get the salary, unless you're really lucky. So
I used to take interviews from my car during lunch. Like
really,
when I was trying to hide from the employer that I had in interviews, and I was doing so many interviews that I had to he would have caught on to me interviewing, that I used to ask the company, can I do it during a lunch break? I used to drive around to the Super Value car park and just take it from the car, just so I could get the reps. Yeah.
So I just think for me that stood out to me, because in that social media culture where a lot of people go for information now, you do see all of this you got to love the grind. You just got to do the reps, and you just got to do thousands and thousands of interviews. But let's take a step back and understand what that looks like. It's not what they're saying, because they're slightly different. Again, survivorship bias and all that kind of stuff. Are you willing to do this level of work? Because if you are, absolutely go for it. But if your values lie somewhere else and you're just being drawn by the X amount of money, and you haven't actually asked yourself, okay, we all love the money. We'd all love the money. But what that pathway looks like for you, for me, and for Mr. Plumber we mentioned earlier on, they're all different pathways. For Mr. Plumber, there's a different level of growth required there to get to that level. For you, it's a different pathway. Neither of them are easier than the other necessarily, but they are different. For me, it's different again. So are you willing, have you awareness around what it would take for you? And are you willing to do that work? And is it worth it? I think they're just important questions to ask you. Are we on 4?
We're on number 4.
Oh, let's go.
Number 4 is build your brand. And I think you might see some parallels in your world to this one. But when you're inside an organization, your brand is essentially like the summary of your personality, your aptitude, your competence. It's what people think of you when they hear your name and you're not in the room. And, oh, who'd be good for a project? Oh, Dan would be good. And Dan is just immediately thought of in the context of his brand and the brand you've built internally. So it's very important to build your brand as your employee in a company, build it with your direct manager, build it with the cross-functional people, build it with other leaders in the company. You get opportunities to meet them in different circumstances, and you're building your brand and you're building your reputation. And, it also goes, in the corridor, your manager goes, oh, Dan done a great job with that project. And little things like that over time are slowly building your brand. But the biggest thing that will do it is the passion and enthusiasm you bring every day, because that is infectious and people will roll their eyes. And I say this a lot, that I'm very conscious. A lot of my career advice comes across like I'm trying to be the teacher's pet version of an employee. But the outcome is what you want, you know. So do what it takes to achieve the goal. Right?
If the goal is what you want.
If the goal is what you want, right? But so that idea of building your brand is really important in terms of your reputation and your enthusiasm you bring. But another key element of how to build your brand is this idea of branding your ideas. So anytime I'm in work and we're working on a project or an initiative or whatever it might be, I brand it as like an internal initiative. So I think of how I'm branding like a business or like a project or like a product. How do I brand this idea? And I'll give you a very brief example. That there was a company I used to work for where we had a partner company, and then together our softwares could like accelerate adoption and drive usage of this combined technology. And that idea of accelerate and drive was like a campaign name. So like, okay, I'm after building the accelerate and drive campaign. All of a sudden it was just actually before COVID hit, I had plans of doing like a Modelo style event to support it, where we'd bring customers out to a racetrack for the accelerate and drive campaign. You have to do 30 minutes, listen to a presentation on how the software accelerates and drives your business outcomes, whatever. But the accelerate and drive campaign was born, and that was my campaign, and that was tied to me, and it was part of my brand, and I'd branded my idea. So when I needed to get cross-functional support for the accelerate and drive campaign, everyone knew about it. And then like the CRO, the chief revenue officer, was like, how's the accelerate and drive campaign doing? And
it becomes part of the vernacular.
Exactly.
Associated with Richie,
associated to me, right? And technically nothing had changed. Like the product hadn't changed. It was just an existing integration, an existing partnership that I spun up into a brand to try activate and get sales from, essentially, right? So that idea of branding your ideas, and now I do it with everything. Any idea I have, it's branded, it's named, it has, as it becomes part of vernacular, and that just helps you again build your brand. And when it comes time for promotions, when it comes time for salary increases, when it comes time for who'd be good to lead that project, who'd be good to take on this new role, your brand is up there with the best, but it also has a great understanding of your brand. Who is he? What can he do? What has he done before? How successful have those things been? And that's much easier to remember that when you've branded your ideas than it is if you know, what was his last month's performance against the key performance indicators? No, like that's not that important.
It's your numbers on a sheet.
It's numbers on a sheet, but like your brand is your summary of who you are. And that's what will get, oh, do you know what? He'd be good for that. And like I got one of the biggest career moves inside of a company to change department came from he's doing some stuff like that. He'd be good for that. And it got brought to me. There's a new role open. We'd like you to go for it. And because he'd be good for that. Yes. That was all it took, you know?
Yeah, this one maps really obviously what I do. Now, I'll talk less about the general business entrepreneur thing here, and more specifically about what I actually do with clients from a podcast and branding and content point of view. The obvious stuff, obviously, everyone wants to build a brand. Everyone knows about personal brand nowadays. But when I really dig into it, people still have this idea that brand and personal brand is the shiny wrapping and what people see and all that kind of stuff. And to a certain degree, yes, that's the initial impression people get. Is it professional, is it clean, is it colourful, does it attract my attention, whatever. But that's not what I talk about, and I don't come from a branding background necessarily. I come from a people background. My background is medical. I was dealing with people in intimate situations and really understanding what their brand was in terms of who are they and where they struggle in life, because most of the medical issues we dealt with were a little bit deeper than coughs and colds and stuff like that. It was linked with who they are and how they spent their life and their stress levels and relationships and stuff like that. So I started to get an understanding of a deeper layer of human beings and how we interact and interpret each other. So when people come in here to try and create content around their businesses, it's weird. The first session is almost like therapy. It's like, yeah, but who are you? Why do you want to do this? They're like, I just want, like, but why?
Yeah.
And we go a little bit deeper. Same kind of thing. If you are projecting something to the world, whether it's for your business or your personal brand, whatever it is, the more you can help people understand the type of person you are, why you're trying to do this thing, the value that you offer them through your service or your personality or your attitude or your application or your experience. All these elements for me make up your brand.
Yeah.
And for a lot of the people that I work with, like me, for example, my brand is me. My business's brand at the moment is me. Not particularly a scalable thing at the moment, but people come because they like me and how I approach different projects and different jobs and how I listen and communicate and understand. So people think of me and not the cameras I use and the lens I use. They don't think about the numbers in the spreadsheet. They don't think about the KPIs, whatever. They think about those things. So when I'm working with somebody, that idea of let's develop a really unique story that people will immediately associate with you and your business and your service and your podcast and your content. And it's not necessarily to do with the colors on your Instagram page or the font that you use on your website. Like that's not my area, but it maps nicely to that brand stuff, which maps nicely to your idea of brand within a company. And it's just all this idea of embrace who you are, understand the value that you offer, understand and acknowledge it's deeper than just the things that you do. It's how you do them. And that becomes your brand. And then the advice you give them, which is really nice, is solidify that, like make it something tangible for people. Give people something they can touch or hold or read or say. Yeah. And then it's easier for them to associate it. And that's like a very human thing. Like we want to make it easier for people to understand.
And remember.
Yeah. 100% and remember. Yeah. So that like the branding thing can be a superficial thing, the rappers and stuff like that. But what you're talking about and what I talk about with my clients, it's a deeper layer to the same thing. Yeah. Help them connect. Yeah. Connect on an emotional level. You're a problem solver, you're competent, you're good to work with, you're trustworthy, and obviously have that be genuine as well. And deliver upon those things. So so that's a nice crossover there. That was 4.
Yeah, the last step, and we kind of touched on this earlier on, is don't be afraid to break yourself. And I break this down, and this is where, and might be a good segue into intrapreneurship, but I talk a lot about intrapreneurship in this bit. I talk about owning your craft and what that looks like. And, for me, again, it's business to business software sales. It's not anything dramatically important to the world, but still in my role, I've always focused on like mastering what I do. And what I do is super niche. It's super boring, but I'm really good at it because I've put a lot of time and effort into mastering my craft and what I do. But it took a lot to do that. It took a lot of time and energy. And this is why I say, don't be afraid to break yourself. Like I poured everything into trying to be the best version of my super boring niche tech sales role, right? Because that's the type of person I am. And then another side of don't be afraid to break yourself is the idea of emptying the tank. So just give it all, give everything you can. And again, we talk about, you're pouring too much commitment into a company that won't reciprocate it, and they won't. They'll drop you like a hot snot whenever they need to do it. But on the journey of trying to increase your salary, it does make an impact. So this idea of, emptying the tank, giving everything to your role, owning your craft is to me very much fueled by this idea of intrapreneurship. So being an intrapreneur to me, and there's different definitions, but I'm a failed entrepreneur who has a load of entrepreneurial tendencies and an entrepreneurial mindset. So I needed somewhere to channel that. And I've been lucky enough, and I've sought out roles that want people with entrepreneurial drive and entrepreneurial mindsets.
What's an entrepreneurial mindset?
Ownership, and I know in particularly in the world of online men coaches, this extreme ownership it continually comes up in all aspects of life. I really believe in it, and I've really had a lot of success by taking the ownership of my responsibilities, and I've failed at them. Taking ownership of my roles and responsibilities in the job, and I've failed at them. So I'm not saying I'm doing it correctly, but I come from a place of everything I come at, I'm going to come at it from an ownership perspective. So what that looks like is just giving it your all, standing over it, and having respect for the work you've done, of what you've built, and that idea of, to me, intrapreneurship is just a level of extreme ownership inside of a company for your role. So what does that look like? Say you might have targets, and they're just arbitrary business targets that don't mean anything in the real world. But if you want your salary, you have to achieve those targets. So you stand over the work you do to march towards achieving those targets. You treat that number, and this is an interesting point for you. Like my goal to hit my commission and get my commission check every quarter, I treat that goal and that number like I own it, like it's a representation of my value. Do I hit 80%? Do I hit 110%? And you need to hit a business goal as an entrepreneur, and it's much more natural to feel like you own that number because you do. you legally, financially own that number. But for me, like I'm just like trying to solve for my for my entrepreneurial drive. So like none of what I do is important, and I don't want to overstate this like as if I'm on some journey of ownership. It's completely not. But I'm someone who has the self-awareness to understand how my brain works and how I'm wired. And if I can find a role that pretends to give me an entrepreneurial drive, or I find a role that satisfies my entrepreneurial itch, and I get to play pretend and think of my quarterly target as the number I own. That's actually just tricking my brain into treating my role and responsibility like an entrepreneur. So I come at it as if it's a business I own, and it's only a goal. My number is a goal, but I treat it like a business. I treat it like I own this small slither of a function within my company. And I think of, how can I build it? How can I expand it? How can I brand it? How do I build a reputation? What is it? How is it thought of? How does it grow? All of the things you would do with it as an entrepreneur, I do with my function inside of my company. And I currently don't manage anybody. So I'm just doing this as like an individual contributor who just has a few roles and responsibilities, and they put me in a corner and say, you play pretend with all these roles and responsibilities. Here's a number. If you hit it, we'll give you your commission check. That commission check gives you a really nice life for you and your family. Like, okay, cool. Like, I'm like, I talk about this idea of like golden handcuffs, like, lock me up. Like, like this is a fun little game I get to play. And I know it sounds dramatically uninspiring to the people who I'm most inspired by, who are entrepreneurs, who are building meaningful things in the world. But what it allows me to do is just build a life for my family, spend time with the kids, live a life the way we want to live. And I've gotten to a place where I'm really happy to do that. And I wasn't always there, but I've gotten to a place now where I am happy to do it. So what I've learned is to do it at the level I want, and to satisfy the entrepreneurial itch, I have to give it everything. I have to empty the tank. I have to own my craft. I have to be the entrepreneur in that environment. The intrapreneur in that environment, because that's how I scratch my itch. And I'm not constantly trying to say, oh, I should open a business, even though I do have that most days. But yeah, sorry, that was a long way of going around.
Thank you for sharing that. Very well put. I think this is possibly one of the most important parts of this conversation. And you've hit a couple of bits I want to talk about there. I'm going to challenge you on some of this now, right? I am currently working with a business coach, and I'm going to give him a shout out here. His name is Mark O'Reilly. He's actually a client of mine as well, because he's absolutely fantastic at what he does. And when we're talking about business, we're not talking about business at all. We're talking about me. We're talking about my emotions. We're talking about all this kind of stuff. Because in my situation, that's what drives most of the decisions and most of the growth and most of the not growth or whatever within the business. Absolutely phenomenal to have this perspective from Mark and his expertise and experience to help me. Mark will work with people who run companies worth 50 million, and he'll work with me in Prymal. Yeah. And it's the same process he'll use. You feel really so much value. You leave the room feeling really valuable to yourself, to the world, all this kind of stuff. And Mark challenged me on what I'm about to challenge you on now, right? So I'm going to share this with you. This is not an original. This is just me passing on something I've learned. And I had and still have a habit of really undermining what it is I do. I do podcasts. I do content. I shoot videos. And I would constantly use the phrase, I'm not doing heart surgery here. And I come from a medical background where I saw lots of people doing incredible things. I have a huge amount of respect for people in the medical industry. I think it's such a noble career and all that kind of thing. I really do have a lot of respect there. But he stopped me immediately. And he's just spent ages hammering me on this point. He's like, do you not think what you do is valuable? And I was like, well, it's not as valuable as this. It's like, hold on. Everything is contextual. Right? So you don't think that your software, B2B software, your role within that is valuable, but it's offering value in so many different ways to your company, to your family, to yourself. You've derived a sense of purpose out of this. And it's not because you have this emotional attachment to the software or to the sale of the software, but it's because you have built a life for your family around what this facilitates for you. And this software offers value to your company and the company you're selling it to. And there's value everywhere there. You're not doing rocket science. I'm not doing heart surgery or whatever like that. But there's inherent value in what we do, and there's perceived value in what we do. This is what I found really empowering. You have really a nice perception of the value that your job, your role, and this particular thing gives you and gives your family. And I have a really nice idea now in my head of what this gives me, what it gives my clients. Because like when I actually think about it, I give a lot to my clients. So much value. And it's not about the podcast. It's about the interaction, the communication, the support, the trust, the relationship, plus the production, all that kind of stuff. So the language I think we use is really important too. And why I think it's important we do this on podcasts is because if somebody's listening who has a job that they view as unimportant, or like, I'm not going to say accountants again, because it's just the first thing that comes to my head, but let's say a salesperson in a role that don't care about the product they're selling, don't care about the people they work with, don't care about the company. there is meaning to be found in that.
Yeah.
And I think this is a really important point, and one you've really nicely made there, is that we can give something meaning. And this idea of intrapreneurship, which I wasn't familiar with, is an incredible framework to do that.
Yeah.
Within your role, as boring as you think the job is, there's opportunity everywhere for you to take responsibility, to excel, to do your best, to apply yourself, to find meaning, to be enthusiastic, to wake up in the morning and go, right, I'm gonna hit these targets. If you find that that's not being reciprocated or it's not being recognized, then you have another decision. You can move, you can go somewhere else. You can, maybe somebody else will value this more, but ultimately you're in control of how you apply yourself to that situation and the meaning you derive from it.
Yeah.
And I always go back to this because it's important. Easy for me to say, easy for you to say. We're in nice positions at the moment. We've loads of decisions, loads of opportunity. Viktor Frankl, I just keep going back to him. Viktor Frankl was in a concentration camp and he says the same thing I'm saying now. There are choices and opportunities for most of us. And within that, there's power.
Yeah.
And that power for you and for me is to find meaning in the things that we do. Like for me, there's a lot of mundane things I have to do. Actually, 95% of what I have to do in my business is mundane. And I didn't see that at the start. I saw the creative, studio people, fucking invoicing and VAT and tax returns and bullshit. Like, and it's ridiculous. And sales and marketing funnels and all this bullshit that I was like, I don't want to do any of this kind of stuff. But I'm able to shift my perspective on that now to these are the things, number one, I have to do if I want to run this business. And number two, there's meaning here. Because if I do these things, I can support my family.
Yeah.
I can grow my business. I can serve my clients. I can sit here with you on a Thursday and have a conversation. So there's meaning to be found in this thing, which is inherently to me mundane and boring and shit. So that's my little pushback for you. Around your language there. What you do is important.
Yeah. I think that when I understand the levels of like ownership and that kind of extreme ownership people bring, sometimes it feels silly to do it, to tie that level of, if you just think about the people who create that content and what they've done in their lives and this idea of extreme ownership, to tie that back to what I do every day feels silly. Now, how I solve that is, well, I'm not tying it back to the email I sent yesterday. I'm tying it back to the life I've given my family and my ability to help other people accelerate their career. So that is how I kind of square the circle for myself. But I think that, I'm okay. Like sometimes I feel like I'm okay being, in that mindset of, oh yeah, go crush it today. Go send my emails. I'm gonna build those spreadsheets, And like I have a level of self-awareness that knows, like, on a global level, you're not doing nothing important. But in an individual level, I am really appreciative of what I've built, and I do really enjoy it. And it's like sometimes it's like a little role play game if you want to get really abstract about what you're actually doing. But I know I take your point, and I do take your point.
Yeah. You don't have to. You don't have to
no, I get
necessarily.
it. I get it.
It had a big impact on me and how I think about, like, because I'm deciding to do this. You're deciding to do your job. You don't have to do your job.
Yeah.
Realistically, neither of us have to do what we're doing right now. We could go and do something else if we wanted to. We have opportunity, and which we're very lucky for. But to square that circle, as you put it there, which I like, I think it's an important mindset for us to be in. And I think to translate this over to people who may not be happy right now, because for the most part, I'm quite happy doing what I'm doing. It's very hard. It's very challenging. It's full of stress and anxiety. There's very little security. It's a whole big thing, but I'm very happy. And I've got lovely support from my family and friends. And I'm in a good place in terms of how I feel about what I'm doing. Loads of challenges, but from the sounds of things, so are you.
Exactly.
Very happy with where you are. Not that it's really easy, but you're happy that this is the level of effort I'm putting in. This is what I'm willing to take. I'm happy with the sacrifices. It's a good life, and you're happy with your family. I'm fully aware there's a lot of people who aren't right now. And this is really where I think this conversation could be helpful and could be useful. If you're somebody now who really isn't happy, whether it's with your level of financial compensation or with the role or with the respect you're getting from your superiors or with how you feel like you're being valued or validated or your sense of identity or your sense of purpose, I think the tools you've shared there are a really great practical framework just to start exploring that a little bit. Because you might start doing loads of interviews and realize, I fucking hate this and I hate all the jobs and I hate all the people. And okay, but that's still a good exercise to do. Yeah. Or you might increase your salary by 25% and realize, God, I'm not willing to pay the price for this. I'll take a pay cut to go do this thing that gives me more time. Yeah.
Well, I think for a lot of people though as well, when because I was there, right? I was really unhappy with where I was in terms of, I need to be on more money. I need more than this. How do I figure it out? I'm not happy in the role. I'm not happy at my lifestyle. I need to crack this code. So I wasn't really unhappy. But what I say to a lot of people is like, I can't remember how to phrase it, but there's a great phrase about like, you need to be unhappy enough to do something about it.
The region beta paradox.
Yeah, the pain needs to be enough
Yeah.
that you'll do something about it rather than not enough. So you almost need to be in more pain
100%.
to trigger the action. So, you know, when I'm working with people, and again, when I say about are they willing, do they want it? Some people just want to complain about things being bad enough. And like, so I love doing that. I love having a good moan. I love having a good complain. But for the things that I really want to change, I probably won't complain about something if I'm not willing to actually fix it. Now I'm failing in that in loads of areas of my life, like fitness and health and stuff like that. Definitely wish I could be doing better. And I love moaning about I have no time to go to the gym, but I have time to do other things. So I'm definitely not solving for that. But if in your career, a lot of people are in that mode where like, oh, I'd love more money, but like interviewing's hard. Well, you wouldn't love more money enough, or you're not. The pain isn't enough to push you further. You know.
Yeah. It is that region beta paradox I talk about in health. You're talking about it in corporate. I talk about it in business all the time. It's this kind almost a contradiction. And I think the example they use is a car. If you were to go 1 mile, you'd walk. If you were to go 2 miles, you'd drive. So weirdly, you'd go 2 miles faster than you go 1 mile. So if as the difficulty increases, the activation energy increases. Whereas a lot of us live in this area where it's just not bad enough.
Yeah.
Maybe a boss isn't great, but they're not a total asshole.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you'd actually be better off if they were the worst boss in the world because it activates you to leave.
Yeah.
Maybe you're out of shape, but you're not like, you haven't had the way I first learned about this actually was the heart attack, the physical heart attack. I worked in the medical industry and I started to notice this trend that everybody had the information. Everybody knew what to do. Don't smoke, don't drink, get more sleep. Like nobody doesn't know that.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that. Maybe there's an education. Obviously, there's a line with education. If it's abject poverty, maybe you don't know that. But most people listening to this podcast know the basics for health.
Yeah.
In my experience in the medical industry, most people, almost everybody, would do nothing about it until they had a life-altering incident. And I just used the heart attack. There was people on a trajectory for a heart attack, genetically predisposed to a heart attack, all the red flags for a heart attack. They knew they were going to have a heart attack. And they wouldn't do anything until they had the heart attack. So the heart attack almost saved their lives.
Yeah.
Because the people who survived the heart attack, a lot of them, now some didn't, but a lot of them radically changed their lives. So it was almost beneficial, weirdly, to have a heart attack. Similar situation here. It's just not bad enough for a huge amount of people. That life is relatively comfortable. They're making okay money. They are fine in their job, but they might be saying, I want to 5x my salary. I want all this money. But there's no activation energy for that person. And I empathize with that as well, because it's an easy groove to fall into if your pathway has been relatively linear. You went to school, then you went to college, and you went to college, you went into a job. I'm not saying that was an easy thing to do, but it was relatively straightforward. There's not a lot of reason for you to do anything, to change anything, and you don't have a lot of the skills to do anything, and you don't have a lot of the energy to do anything, because you're just in this humdrum routine that you don't really like, and then it's not filling your bucket up, and then you've no energy, and then maybe in your 30s or 40s and you're a little bit more tired, you've a little bit less energy, and now you've got kids, and now you've all this
excuses.
And people listen to people like me and you on podcasts saying that, like, fuck these excuses, what privilege they're talking about. They are absolutely excuses. But I do understand how someone can get to that state, and I only understand this from the medical world. I could see how someone could get to a state where they would have a heart attack. It's slow, it's insidious, it's not obvious. They're in region beta, they don't recognize it, no one's telling them, everybody else is doing it. It's just the path of least resistance, and all of a sudden, bang, I've had a heart attack. Bang, I'm 10 stone overweight. Bang, I'm addicted to alcohol. There's no judgment for me in that, because I could see how I could be any one of those things if I took my eye off the ball for 2 seconds. And I'm just lucky to be in an environment where if I take my eye off the ball, the business falls apart, or a client's ringing me, or someone's my mentor is breathing down my neck, or like I have so many fail-safe triggers now that I know straight away, to the point where I'm almost neurotic about it. I have too many triggers. Everything's triggering me. So I'm in that position, which I could see how someone could get to a point where maybe you're not happy with your job. But why I like listening to you is, here are some tools that if you take a minute to think about, am I happy? Okay, I'm not happy. I'm not going to wait to lose my job, or for something to go wrong with my manager, or to have an argument, or be fired, or anything like that. I can potentially now create my own activation energy, because now I think I want this. So maybe start doing the interviews, or maybe start writing out, like, what would I like? What's a salary level that I think would give me a good life if money is important to you? Or what's a working arrangement? Because this is another thing people are kind of jumping jobs for now. The work from home thing is shifting a bit because everyone's gone back into the office. But
I'm luckily fully remote.
For now.
Fully remote.
For now.
My company doesn't have offices.
Oh, there you go.
The company's fully remote as a company. So that's a nice way to be.
Yeah, but that's one thing people are actually, I've heard that conversation now. Money is one thing, but people are looking for a little bit more of that freedom that they got
Yeah.
used to with during COVID, like, and they're maybe negotiating based on better working conditions or a work from home policy or what are the health insurance benefits or whatever. So there's lots of things that might light your fire.
Yeah.
Or it could be a pay cut, but you've got more growth trajectory in a specific role. I specifically know one guy who left a really well-paid job, took a huge pay cut to get involved in a startup that he was very passionate about. Like, fuck yeah, that's a win.
Yeah.
Maybe financial success. I won't use financial success. Maybe financial growth isn't an incentive for him. He wants to be part of something. That lights his fire. So there's loads of different routes to fruit here. It's very nuanced, but I think your framework covers a lot of the bases that I would talk to most people about.
Yeah.
Not happy in my job. No real prospect for growth. Want to make more money.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see.
Yeah.
Let's try out the steps. Jump in there.
Could we go to the bathroom?
We won't go, but you can go.
I'll go to the bathroom.
And I'm keeping this in the podcast.
Okay. Let's go.
And we are back. Just a side note, we did not go to the bathroom together. Richie went to the bathroom. To bring this one onto the home straight, my friend, I think a lot of what we spoke about today is dispelling some myths and some misconceptions for people about maybe what's required to get to a certain outcome or what these spaces look like. For me, it's definitely helped give me more context about something that I reference quite a lot, like this idea. I don't do it much anymore, but it used to be the whole kind of like quit your job and start a business. The corporate world is and then I started to realize, hold on, there's no right or wrong way to do this because like entrepreneurship is a pain in the fucking hole a lot of the time. But there's a specific set of outcomes I'm looking for that this can give me. But most people I speak to, like there are no, and this is not a slight, there's no, I don't have grand designs to change the world here.
Yeah.
I'm trying to influence my life and give my family a better life. And this is the pathway I'd like to see to do it. You are doing the exact same thing. You were doing this not to create better B2B software for selling CRM tools or I don't actually know exactly what role you're in now, but you're doing this to create a better life for yourself and your family. We have the same goal here. Yeah. And a lot of what we're doing is very aligned in terms of how you approach the work you do and how you approach the work I do. It's just in different containers. And there's pros and cons to both. So I think that is becoming really clear to me now. It's you've helped me solidify that even more, that even within this corporate structure, big bad corporate, big bad tech, you can have a really, really good, healthy, balanced, happy, fulfilling lifestyle and be compensated really, really well. Yeah. And it can benefit you in so many different ways. And there's so many benefits that sometimes I find myself craving. Like, I wish I could just fucking go home and not think about my business and not have to spend 2 hours sending invoices and do all these different things. And I've done it to myself. I fully acknowledge that, but it's got to be nice just to go. But I fully appreciate that's not the easy solution either. Like, that has its own inherent challenges that I'm not willing to take on. Hence, I'm doing this thing. So I think that conversation really, really has helped clear that up for me and hopefully for other people. Just on something else we talked about, which is similar in nature, but kind of a slight deviation from this pathway, is this idea of what other people see from the outside. A lot of it's around content. You said earlier on in the conversation, you are the type of person who is inherently receptive to
susceptible.
Better word.
I'll call it susceptible.
Susceptible, like me, to a lot of this hype about the life you can have as a business owner, an entrepreneur, and the glamorization of a lot of these different things, which in some cases is fine, but in a lot of cases can be very misleading and can cause a lot of us to feel shame and judgment and inadequacy and less than when it comes to who we are and what we do and where we are in life and what our level is. Talk to me a little bit about your experience with that, with content and with people that you've kind of looked at and felt, oh, I could do this thing, and felt inspired by, and then realized, oh, maybe it's not what it was.
Yeah, I think I'm so susceptible. Like, I will look at, I'll see things online, I'll see trends, and I'll let it stew for a while, and then I'll think, okay, maybe that's where I go. And I've fallen down so many different paths like that. Never to my detriment, or never went too far down the road. But I always kind of get a sniff of like, what's going on here? Is there some opportunity that I'm not aware of? Is there some opportunity to build a business, to build additional income? And I think we're absolutely drowning in that type of content now online. All this the side hustle culture is great, and I do want to say that, like, people who are entrepreneurs, like, I admire them out of an envious place, that I think that that's what I could do and should do and maybe one day will do, but they're probably the people I want to be, in terms of just satisfying the entrepreneurial drive I have. And I look up to entrepreneurs, particularly, you see Irish entrepreneurs, people like Bobby Healy and people like, leaders in Irish business who are doing great things. I'm like, that is the goal. Like, that is someone to really look up to. But aside from those, like, kind of, traditional business leaders, you see a lot of this online business and build your side business and build your side hustle. And I definitely fell down that path of looking at those people and figuring out, oh, this is what I should do. And that's actually where the course originally came from. So I was a big consumer of Justin Welch on LinkedIn, and I seen this idea that he was, building this course business. So I took one of his courses, and then I said, all right, I'll build a course as well. And that's where the 5 steps to increase your salary came from. Now, very quickly, what I realized is when I followed his course and I built my course, I realized that everyone I was sending it to, I'd send it to them with a promo code. It's like, oh, you don't pay for it, you watch it for free, because I had it behind a paywall. And then I realized very quickly that like the type of people I want to help in their career, I don't want to charge those people. They're not people who are going to give me an income. And then I realized I just want to help people. So then I was like, right, I'll pivot to the content side of things. I'll just create the content. And then as I went on to the world of creating content around coaching and seeing different content creators, you see all these people who are coaches, coaching coaches. And you see all these people who are telling you can do 5K a month, 10K a month, 20K a month. And it's just been really hard to get a grasp of. It's been really hard to understand. And I've given up on understanding it, to be honest, because I don't think it's like genuinely legitimate in a lot of cases. But it's been a real learning curve for me to kind of get to a really nice place now where all I want to do is help people increase their salary and accelerate their career. I can do that at scale by creating content once, seeing can people watch it, like this podcast, like my YouTube videos. And if they do, great. If they get something of it, great. And I do have people telling me like, oh, I watched your video, it was helpful. I do have people message me, hey, I've got a meeting with my boss. I want to ask for more money. How can I do it? And I'm just helping people, and I genuinely get joy out of that. And that's where I am today. I'm just getting a lot of joy out of it. I'm trying not to fall into traps of how to scale your business to 10K a month. I'm just trying to kind of get to a place where I'm helping people and I'm happy.
Yeah. Beautiful. Very, very, very beautiful picture you painted there. I relate to a lot of what you're saying. I'm also quite susceptible to this stuff. I really was when I was younger as well. I think why it's important to have a conversation around it is, in my experience, now that I operate in this space, a huge amount of it is false.
Yeah.
And we talked about this earlier on. You have your outliers, you have your Justin Welches, and you have your Alex Hormozis, and they are at the top of these, let's call them pyramids. They are at the top of these bubbles, these pyramids, where they are genuinely successful, and this is how they've built their success. And what they tend to do in a lot of these spaces is they create more income for themselves by teaching other people how their success happened.
Yeah.
You're an example of not someone who sells this, but of that kind of a story. Mm-hmm. I've done this thing personally. Here's my experience, and now I will create a framework and a coaching framework to teach you how to do what I've done.
Yeah.
People do it with content. People do it with courses. People do it with business coaching. A lot of people do it in the fitness world. That was a huge thing that exploded over COVID. Online coaches coaching other coaches.
Yeah.
And they make more of their money, most of their revenue coming from coaching other coaches than they do from their actual coaching business. I don't have a problem with any of these things objectively.
But I get why they do that, right? Because when I'm sitting at home, say 5 years ago, and I'm trying to think to myself, I want to create a business. I want to create a business just because I'm an entrepreneurial type person. The number one business advice I ever got was, if you're going to create a business, it has to be something that you're an expert at, or you have an innate set of skills at, because it's much easier to do something that comes more natural to you, or that you have a natural ability or skill or knowledge in, and you're an expert in. It's much easier to just spin that into a business than it is to learn a new skill and turn that into a business. So when I got to the point of, following Justin Welch and trying to figure out, what will my course be? What can I teach people? The only thing I could teach people at that point in my life was how to increase your salary. I increased my salary by 500% in 5 years. I must be pretty good at increasing your salary. I must be pretty good at career progression. That was a thing I felt a relatively level of expertise in. So I was like, that's what my business is. So when I see people who, go through an amazing weight loss transformation and then become personal trainers, I'm like, yeah, you're an expert in that. Like, you teach me, how did you do that? And so the coaches coaching coaches, that's the challenging bit more so. But when I see people who just spin off their lived experience and what they've learned into a business, I love that for them. And I think it's great to see. For me, it was just all I had. I didn't have anything else. I don't have hobbies. I don't have abilities. I don't have skills. All I've ever done in my life was increase my salary. That's all I can offer the world.
You're also a father and you've got lots of things going on. Yeah, no, I'm going to be facetious there.
Yeah.
That's why I was saying objective. I have no problem with any of these models or approaches, and go do your thing. If that's what you want to do, go do it. But the danger with this for us mere mortals consuming this content is really real, because we've spent an hour and a half here now giving context to your story, the challenges, the realities of it, what's actually involved. That's not in the marketing spiel for the latest course, because it's here's 10 steps to increase, not increase your salary, to build your fitness business. Here's 10 steps to do this. And what is left out there is all of the principle-based stuff that we talked about that actually helps that person build their business. And in a lot of cases, I have experienced their specific set of circumstances are different, and their experience doesn't map over to my experience. Their specific position doesn't map over. But most importantly, their desired goals and outcomes are not the same as mine. So they're selling it as, here's how to grow your fitness business. What I hear is, here's how to get the lifestyle that you want. But they've built their lifestyle, what they want. And a lot of them kind of say tongue in cheek, oh, no, you don't want this life. It's hard. You don't understand. But they still send me their course.
Yeah.
And when I buy their course, I realize I already knew most of this information, number one. And number two, that's not what I don't want. I don't want to do 20 hours a day, and I don't want to have 50 staff, and I don't want this mad growth. So what I've actually seen now, and I won't name names, but there's a couple of really well-known coaches in that space, and I'm talking about the fitness space, who've completely pivoted. They've reached the top of the mountain. They've realized it's not what they thought it was. All the way up the mountain, they've been bringing other people up the mountain with them 2 steps behind, which is generally how a lot of these businesses are built. Yeah, they're not necessarily there teaching other people. They're on the way, but they're 2 steps ahead of me, so they can teach me how to keep following them. Yeah. But then they get to the top of the mountain and realize, oh, this actually isn't what I thought it was. Yeah. They're at their couple of million or whatever it might be. They've sold, they've exited, whatever they've done. And then they realize, oh, all of the other stuff I now want in my 30s or 40s, relationship with my children, relationship with other people, stress-free, whatever, personal development, I haven't actually gained a lot of that. And this is just a common story. So now what I'll do is I'll start telling everybody else, actually, no, hold on. This isn't it. Let's pivot. And I've seen this with a couple of people. Let's pivot a little bit here. Let's really focus on why you want to build a business, the type of person you want to be, the relationships you want to build, like what are you actually doing this for? And with most of us, when we boil it down, it's not the money, it's what the money represents. Yeah. And if the money represents success and respect and power and everyone will love me, that's a problem. If money represents I can give my family a better lifestyle, then it's okay, well, how much money is that? Yeah. Do you need to earn 5 million a year to take care of your family? No. Yeah. And as we spoke about earlier on, there's probably a level, whatever that is, different for everybody, where you can live a really good lifestyle, have all the adventure, take care of your family, etc. So that messaging is changing in small niche pockets that I've experienced, but there's still this mass approach to do this thing, do these 5 steps to get this particular thing. And it's I think it's lacking so much context, but I'm so susceptible and vulnerable to that, that it's very hard to see all of the success and go, oh God, what I'm doing is wrong. I need to do this thing. And then it pulls you off track. It starts to question yourself.
Where do you think it goes? Like, where do you think the direction goes of, that kind of traditional funnel of, create content to build an audience so that you can monetize the audience? Yeah. Like, where's that going?
I think it's dead now. Honestly, and when I speak to most of my business owners, because I work with people who are not influencers, and I've worked with influencers before, but it's not my gig. Yeah. And the traditional model is build the audience, monetize the audience. How most people monetize the audience was through brand deals and marketing. Most companies now realize they're not giving big brand deals anymore. The ultra big people are still getting brand deals. Yeah. But all of these kind of small or medium to small influence trying to grow this big brand to get brand deals, the companies they're aiming at are realizing this person has 100,000 followers and 3 customers. Yeah. None of these people are, and it's not that they're buying fake followers. It's that this growth, this viral growth on social media, most of these people aren't here to buy.
It doesn't translate.
Yeah. They're not customers. They are not customers. One of the reasons my industry grew so much, the podcast stuff, and why there's so much money there now, is because it's much easier if you have 100 people listening to your podcast to envision that probably 80% of these people are customers, because they're so engaged,
invested in,
they're so invested, they're so deep in who you are and what you do, that if I partner with an advertiser who shares my values, that chances are most of my listeners will probably buy off this advertiser if we pitch the ad right or whatever. So the podcast market grew, and that showed me one thing: people are looking for connection and trust. So the social, this whole thing of I'll build 100,000 followers and I'll sell my audience to all these different brands, it's dead. It's gone, except at the ultra high level. And even that is shifting now, because as I said, as a company, they're realizing this is bad marketing spend. We're getting such a low ROI on this spend here, where we could spend it elsewhere, podcasts, or like building our own media arms, or investing in ads or whatever like that, because paid marketing is still quite big. But the influencer thing is dead. So when I think about approaching a project of growth or podcast or content, for me the funnel looks different now. It's okay, first of all, and this is the airy fairy part, why are we doing this? What's the impact we're trying to have? If we want to get a message out there, we need to understand the message, like, to its deepest core.
Yeah.
What is the value? What sets us apart? What is the USP? What like there's some traditional marketing stuff and then there's some identity stuff. Why will people care about you?
Yeah.
Why are people going to listen to you compared to Joe Rogan? Because you're on the same app.
Yeah.
I can either listen to Richie Corcoran or Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
That's a big gap
Yeah.
of a decision to make there. Why will I care about you? Okay, so we no longer need to capture 5 million people because that's not the business model anymore. The model here is we need to have this community. Everyone's into community now, personal brand. All of these people are listening because they trust you. So what are we doing with that attention? And in most cases, in my world, it's we have a business behind that. We have a service or a piece of value we can offer. For example, you provide career coaching or you provide coaching on how to increase your salary. That makes a lot of sense then to build resources and content around.
Yeah.
But the motivation for that has to be servitude. We want to give value here. We're not trying to grow an audience to extract from.
Yeah.
We're monetizing this audience, but I don't even like that phrase anymore. We're not. We're building a group of people who are consuming our content, who may be interested in working with us, and that's how we monetize.
Yeah.
We have our own business behind it. The other model is so unpredictable and so ropey to me that it's and we're late to the game now because Justin Welsh is already there. What are you going to do? Be another Justin Welsh? There's people in career coaching who have built a big, huge audience, and they're still monetizing a percentage of that big audience by doing their courses and stuff like that. You try and follow that and you're competing with those people.
Yeah.
So like the model is arbitrary.
It's what we spoke about as well, that there's no lack of information in the world. So this is what I'm kind of been tussling with since you said it to me, is that, I'm creating career coaching content probably, selfishly because I want to.
Yeah.
Because I think I've got a bit of a message, but if you go on to Google or YouTube or TikTok and look for ways to increase your salary, I'll be drowned out in that world. But that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I know, like, on an individual level, I've helped individuals, and that satisfies me. Like I have people I've coached that I've increased their salary by 40, 50, 60, 70% in one career move. That person means a lot to me. And that's kind of what's satisfying me right now. I don't know where this is going to go. I just want to keep doing it because I enjoy it. I'm struggling with the bandwidth of it. I'm struggling with actually like helping. I have a backlog of people that I need to help. And so I'm struggling with that and struggling with my time management, but I just still want to do it because it's all I can offer people, and like, I don't want to sound like defeatist, but like, my family members, and when we move in our house, like I have people who will have a van, collect something from me. I've got plumbers, I've got electricians, and I've got all these people around who would help me. And all I've ever been able to give back is a CV. And that's kind of how all this started. Like I have a Google folder with surnames of entire family units where I've done CVs for family units. I've got friends categorized by surname. I've got just this library of CVs that I've been doing for people for years. And now it's like, okay, that's what I can do for people. That's my service. That's what I can give to people. And then it's like, how can I scale that? How can I give to more people? And that's where the course came from.
And this is the fundamental reason why. You just said it there. There are other people out there who have the exact same information as you do. So why am I going to listen to you? Well, it's because I like you. It's because I trust you. It's because I believe that you're trying to do the best for me. If you just carbon copy other models out there, this is fundamentally the problem with one of those fitness things. There's a lot of really good foundational business information in there that people can learn from those courses, and similarly from Justin Welsh and everything like that. But that information is available everywhere.
Yeah.
Why people actually will work with you in the future is because they like you and they trust you. That is it. That is the personal brand. And when most of us start to create content, we carbon copy what other people are doing because it's comfortable and it's safe and we see it works for them. We're now late to that game. And this is not defeatist either. It's not don't do it. We have to start somewhere and learn somewhere. But the more you can lean into what you've just explained to me, your desire to help other people, your desire to lean into this skill set you have, whether it's the only skill set you have or not, which I don't believe, by the way, but if it's the only skill set you have or not, it doesn't matter. Your willingness to lean in, your willingness to share that, your willingness to serve, your understanding of the pain that these people are going through. Because let's be realistic, your market, if you were to go down that route, is monstrous because so many people are not happy with where they are.
Yeah.
So many people are not happy where they are. And you have a skill set and a framework that you can help those people with.
Yeah.
But your understanding of why that's important to them is even more important because you know what that pain feels like. And you also know what that mountain is like to climb. And you also know that most people don't have the activation energy, so you could provide that. And you also now know that it's not information they're looking for.
Yeah.
It's not a course they're looking for. It's a hand on their back.
Yeah.
It's a hug. It's a smile. It's a thumbs up.
That's the angle that, my wife thinks I should promote a lot more. Like we're both from Tala, and typically what you see when you go into some of these tech industries is, people from more affluent areas are the majority of people working for these tech companies in these high salary roles. And even when I learned about it, it was from somebody who had been, born and raised in Tala and got this amazing job. And he was this outlier when we seen his salary and his salary growth. And we're like, what's he doing? What's this? And then I learned about the tech industry and I was like, we don't know about this. Like no one ever told me this. Like when I left school, it was get a trade, be a teacher, or work in an office. No one ever told me that when you work in an office, it's not
very different.
Very different offices, very different style. And it was that idea that, okay, like the first angle we had when I was trying to tease this out was, raising awareness of the tech industry for people in working class communities, because they just don't get told it's an option. And I want to be respectful of people of all backgrounds, but if you tell somebody who's come from a deprived background the salaries you can earn in the tech industry, they're probably going to be hungrier and fight harder. And you're like, what do you mean I could earn 60, 70, 80K a year to do X, Y, Z? I'm coming for that. And that's kind of the drive I had.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've been trying to do as well, is go back to my community and figure out hey, you didn't know about this yet. Here's what it is. Do you want to come with me? And you ask people, I always say this joke, you ask people would you be on a computer all day? Would you do sales? Oh no, that wouldn't be for me. I have to be out with the tools or doing that.
What if they paid you $100,000?
Would you do it for $100,000? And then it's okay, yeah, let's go. So,
that's fundamentally the core of why people should do what you're doing and go on podcasts and have these conversations and create content. And it's because, as we alluded to earlier on, easy for me to say everyone has opportunities. Some people who grew up where you grew up didn't know this was an opportunity. They didn't have the information. And you can provide that information to that community. You don't have to change the world. And this is honestly what I'm trying to think for myself. I'm not trying to change the world. If the world changes as a result of what I do, amazing, fine, that's fine. But I don't have to change the world. And this is the real hallmark, the thing that people struggle to swallow sometimes. If I can have a small ripple effect in my direct community, and that starts with me being a better person and me working on myself and all that kind of stuff. And then with my business, if I can have an impact and serve, from what I understand from people who I admire ahead of me, who are successful in the ways I want to be successful. I don't just mean financial. I mean, they do things that are aligned with their values, who they are, and they help people and have an impact. From what I learned from those people who are successful, it does come as a result of you doing what we just described, serving your community, your people, figuring out who those people are and leaning in and be willing to be vulnerable in that community, willing to share, willing to not gatekeep, wanting to help. These are all such cliche things to say, but so is, you can do whatever you want in your job and you can climb the ladder. They're all cliche things to say. The practicalities of that are difficult, as you're finding out, because you go on social media, you have to break through the noise. I have to do these things. I have to get a hook in every video. I have to do these with my podcast. I have to do it. You don't have to do anything. Yeah. What you have to do first is realize you have an inherent value to offer here, and do you want to help and do you want to serve? And yes, this could be a revenue generator for you. Don't be afraid of that. Don't be ashamed of that. But it probably won't be a revenue generator if all you're doing it for is to generate revenue, or it will generate revenue and you'll be fucking miserable. Yeah. So that's my world. That's when I'm talking to clients. These are the conversations we have, and these are all successful business owners. And I feel like an imposter having this conversation. Yeah. But I come from a people background. Yeah. And I know now that there's so much bullshit out there online. People are looking for people. They're looking for trust. AI is here now as well. Everyone's terrified. Yeah. I'm thinking, here's a huge opportunity here, because what's this going to do? More people are going to want human connection. More people are want to go and sit in a room with someone else and have a conversation, not do it online or on Zoom or fake. Everyone's like, "That's fake podcast. Your business is done." I was like, who the fuck wants to listen to a fake podcast?
Who's going to listen
to it? No one. More people are now going to want to listen to organic podcasts. And even if the podcast thing changes, there's an opportunity here, because we will always crave that connection, trust. So if you can build that into your software business, your podcast business, your shoe business, your plumber business, I think that is the principle-based approach that's not going to change. And you build everything else on top of it with tools. Yeah. That's what I think. Yeah. Could be completely wrong. I have no idea.
We'll see.
We will absolutely see. Time will tell. Richie, I will not take any more of your time. I really enjoyed that conversation. Didn't know where I was going to go when you initially reached out. I was like, what is the conversation here? Because it's not that I don't care about, this is absolutely true. I don't not care about people who work in employ, but I don't work there. This is a selfish thing. But then I was like, I have a huge blind spot for this. And a lot of the principles are probably quite similar. Yeah. Which we've now seen. There's a lot of crossover. A lot of overlap. And it's really empowering for me. And I can imagine someone who's maybe in a job that they're not enjoying, really empowering for them. Yeah. Moving forward, When's the podcast starting? When's the content coming? Where can people find you? Can people reach out? Are you happy for people to get in contact with you?
Yeah, there's a website, just richiecorcoran.com. On that website, it'll just link you to the YouTube channel or all the socials. It's just Richie Corcoran _. So yeah, reach out. Like if anyone who doesn't know me is like reaching out and saying, "Oh, can I help? Can I help?" Just watch the content on YouTube. It's a 75-minute course. It's 5 steps broken down into 3 pillars. So it's essentially 15 mini lessons. It's all really digestible, like 3 to 5 minute videos. It'll only take you 75 minutes to get through it all. The best thing people can do is watch all of that, because if they watch all of that, that's a majority of the advice I'm going to give you in a one-to-one setting. If you've questions after that, definitely reach out. All my DMs are open on all the socials. You can email as well on the website, richiecorcoran.com, and I'll answer the question. But that's the best place to start, because all my advice that I'll give you in a one-to-one session, everything we spoke about here, is condensed into 75 minutes on YouTube.
Brilliant. And I did see you've done a few talks.
Yeah.
Within schools?
Yeah. So my school, I went back to my school. They wanted me to speak. I went back to my university. They wanted me to speak. And, you know, I think particularly for those ages, you can really shape people going forward. So
that's so powerful.
Yeah. No, I love doing that. I love doing podcasts like this, because as we spoke about earlier on, like I'm creating content as well, but having these conversations is much more natural to get across opinions and stories and experiences. And I think kind of in a speech setting to a school or college, I love doing that as well.
Yeah, amazing. Well, if anybody's listening, I think this information, if I had this information when I was 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, whatever, trying to figure out what I'm doing with my life, it just gives me more power. I now have, like you saying, people from your background particularly have now more access to the opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think that is really, really powerful. And that you being a conduit for that with the experience and the background.
Yeah.
You came from that area. You figured this out yourself. You went on your journey, and now you're looking at other people. Oh, you can do this too. Yeah. It's not that complex, but there's hard work. Like I said, there is hard work, but it's not out of reach.
Yeah.
It's if you want this thing, you can do this thing. I think that's so powerful. So if anyone's listening, and I would highly recommend, if you're looking for people to speak, this is probably a good topic to speak about, because we often say, man, so much of the stuff we learn in school is bullshit.
Yeah.
This is a really powerful life tool,
yeah.
especially in the way the world is moving now, where there's a lot more intellectual work, and potentially Mr. Plumber will be a robot driven by AI in the future, potentially. So like there's that as well. Like intellectual work is here to stay. Working on a laptop is a powerful thing. And it's not, obviously it's not all you do. That's underselling what you do, but like being involved in projects, tech work, software work, it's a huge part of the world right now. And a lot of us just don't think that's, what is that?
Yeah.
Like even what I do, like podcasts. Because my parents, they're like, "How's the radio show?" They'll figure it out eventually. But Richie, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Really enjoyed that, and we'll be keeping an eye and watching the rising star in the content world.
Appreciate it.
Not at all.
Cheers.
Folks, thank you so much for listening to that episode with Richie. I feel like it filled in a few blind spots that I personally would have, and added more nuance to this conversation around business, career, progression, identity, and all those different things. If you are enjoying listening to this podcast, it would be great if you showed your support by subscribing on whatever platform you're listening on, so you never miss an episode, and leaving us a rating or review to let us know how we're doing and if you're enjoying the show. Thank you again, and I will see you in the next episode.